Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Cup, Duet Reviews, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. I will be your host for this episode, Ryan Borochovitz, and today we are talking about Love You Forever and More Munch, presented by Young People's Theatre. It is based on 5 beloved children's books by the amazing Canadian children's author Robert Munsch, adapted for the stage by Stephen Colella and Sue Minor, and co-directed by Colella and Karen Gilodo. As always, blanket apology if we are mispronouncing anybody's name. It's currently running at Young People's Theatre on their Ada Slate stage until March 21st, 2026. And to talk about this amazing show, I am joined by a very special guest today. She is a Canadian best-selling children's author. She has worked in the children industry in daycare and has volunteered in children's libraries. And she also happens to be my mom, who read these books to me when I was a wee little one. Diana Rosenthal, welcome to The Cup. How are you doing today?
Very excited and scared to be here. First podcast, not ever to watch, but to, be on.
Yes.
It's like when you say it's my first book, but not to ever have read, to have written.
Mm-hmm. You are indeed a Canadian best-selling children's author. You want to tell us about your book? Big sigh.
It's a big sigh because I don't ever say it's a best-selling book.
But you should, because it is.
It's called The Best Audience, a lesson about food allergies for young children. It's illustrated by your two brothers.
That's right.
It's old now. It's from 2010, kind of came out more in 2011, early 2011. It's an educational resource meant to be in school libraries, public libraries, classrooms, homes, to teach children and their parents, really, about life-threatening food allergies and how to keep everyone safe.
Very good. Big fan of this book. Is there anywhere where people can buy it if that sounds interesting to them?
It's not really in print anymore, so it should be. It's been deshelved from a lot of public libraries. It's still in school boards across Canada, but it's not really. The website's down now. It's a project that's finished.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And I have to ask you our favorite icebreaker question before we get into this fun discussion about this fun show. What is in your cup today?
So I have my sloth bamboo travel mug. You have the same one.
I have the same one. Cheers. Got little sloths on it.
Cheers. It's got water in it. And it's just such a cute cup because who doesn't love a sloth?
Yes, I chose it specifically, not knowing that you were going to use the same one, but because it is a cup that you gave me, which is part of the explanation for why you have your own.
Yeah, I think it's a really adorable cup.
Yeah, I think it's really cute. And also, do you want to tell people about your fun rabbit shirt?
Oh, I was a bunny mom long before I was a mom to humans like Ryan. And this is one of my rescue shirts. I volunteer for Rabbit Rescue, and I was a foster mama to 2 adorable bunnies until just last year. This is artwork by the very talented Kate Davies, and it says, "You can't buy love, but you can rescue it."
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Cute bunny
Adopt,
shirt.
don't shop.
Adopt, don't shop. Hashtag that.
Hashtag that.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me on this episode. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we are talking about Love You Forever and More Munch, which is Young People's Theatre's adaptation of 5 Robert Munsch books. And you might be wondering why I wanted you specifically to join me on this episode. As I mentioned, when I was a little one, we would read all of these Robert Munsch books, and Love You Forever in particular was a very special one that held a special place in our hearts. It's also the story of a young child growing up and their mother, and that relationship blossoming into the various stages of adulthood, senior citizenry, and eventually the cycle repeating with their own child. So I thought this would be a very meaningful conversation for you and I to, one, see this show together, for me to share an aspect of my love for theater with you, specifically through this show that I thought would resonate with your experience with this particular literary source material. And then we could have a very interesting conversation about what we thought of the show, if you're okay with all of that.
Lot. Yes.
You agree to this.
I did. Hey, tell everybody how long it took me to decide to do it when you asked.
Yes. So I texted you asking if you would be interested in this, and you right away responded yes with how many S's?
At least 45.
45.
Or 17, to use a Robert Munsch.
Maybe we'll talk more about that. So you sent a very enthusiastic yes response, and I assumed that you must have misread my message because you, or had not realized that it would entail you being on camera.
Yeah, I know. But then when I knew that one of the books in the play would be Paper Bag Princess, I just assumed on camera I can wear a paper bag over my head.
Did
Like
you bring one?
you said no.
I didn't say no. I said, yeah, bring one. It'd be fun.
You said, "Ooh, I see where you're going, Gavin." And you said no.
Okay, so no paper bag for you. You are
No paper
committed
bag.
to being on camera. Well, thank you for being less shy for the occasion. I hope we have a fun time talking about this.
Well, it was a fun time seeing this show with you
Yeah.
yesterday. It was
Well,
so good.
well, that gets us directly into it. So why don't we start with just in our non-spoiler section as we do, we will get more into spoilers after a clearly demarcated segment break later in the episode. But how about we start with just you telling our listeners what this show even is?
It's a staged production meant for young children with their families, illustrating on stage 5 of Robert Munsch's storybooks. Do you want to list the 5 books?
Yeah, so we have in the title is Love You Forever, so that is one of the
Obviously,
prominently featured ones. We also have the Paper Bag Princess. Also, we could be showing these on screen because
this is the only one we actually. Well, we have a few other Robert Munsch books, but out of these 5,
yeah,
this is Love You Forever. I kept it, forever. I bought it when your brother David was born in 1990. And so that's the one we own. We didn't have to borrow it from the library.
But you were very proactive and went to get the others from the library in anticipation of seeing this show. So, and I have those handy on my end here. So the other ones are the Paper Bag Princess, one of Robert Munsch's most famous books. And then we also have Zoom, which is one that I don't even remember ever reading as a child. I think it came a little later after I was aging out of the key Robert Munsch demographic. I was reading a lot of... Yeah, this I think came out in, no, we just looked this up, 2002. So I would have been 7 and just sort of on the teetering out. I was reading a lot of Jigsaw Jones by that point, and Robert Munsch I was too cool for school for that. And then...
Everett is too cool.
I agree. And now as an adult, I can appreciate it more than 7-year-old me maybe could, as he's like, that's for babies.
Robert Munsch.
Yeah, no. And then we also have Mortimer, which is featured very prominently in this piece as a bit of a framing device in addition to just being one of the stories featured. And we have Mermal, a fun one about a displaced ragamuffin. So those are the 5 books that are covered over the course of this fun Robert Munsch experience. There's an interesting element of the framing device through the lens of Mortimer in particular, which is very light pre-spoiler. We'll say that the plot of that book is used as a bit of a scaffolding for weaving together the various stories from the other ones.
Very brilliantly done.
Okay, well, that's a good segue out of synopsis, as brief as we wanted to be, into general appraisal. What did you think of this production?
Oh, I loved it. I also, first and foremost, my heart was going to just explode that you could have asked anybody and asked me to do this with you. And also being in an audience that was for school field trips to come to. And we were there with all these school children, which my favorite age group of kiddies.
About 5 to 9, I think is roughly the age.
Right. And the one probably teacher or parent volunteer we asked, she was with 3rd graders.
Yeah.
And, but we saw much younger ones too. So we were guessing that on average, they were between 5 and 7, 8 years old.
Kindergarten to grade 3, I guess, is roughly.
Yeah. And it was just so cute to hear them giggle. Because it was very funny.
Yeah.
As all Robert Munsch books are. So very well, again, done to make it so funny. Super, super well acted. And so it was just so fun to be in that audience with those kiddies. And they were so well behaved, so well prepared for the field trip. So I feel like their teachers... love teachers, they really did a great job preparing them I'm sure a lot of them were in the theater for the first time. And I think they just really, it was so fun to be there and just be there with them.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. And also we'll even add, there was a Q&A portion at the end of the show.
Right, with 2 of the actors.
Yeah, so 2 of the actors stayed on stage. I'm guessing the 3 actors take turns
playing
that role. So one of them got a break while the other 2 stayed on. And one of, I believe, the education coordinator, apologies if we don't remember your specific title, came on with a microphone and started not even by asking the kids for their questions, asking a very good question to the kids about the plots of one of the show and why they thought it played out a certain way. And they all gave very cute answers to that. Very enthusiastic, a lot of them raising their hands, too many to all get picked on. But
I know, and they know how to raise their hand because
yeah,
they're in school, and they were so well behaved too, and so into the experience.
Yeah. And then after that question, they were invited to ask their own questions. And we were quite struck by how quite intelligent the questions were about not just like, I think, as you often put it, that questions that don't start with question words.
That's the thing adults are famous for doing at the end of any meeting or any presentation you give. You go, are there any questions? And then there's always that person who
wants to stand up and tell you about all the years of service they've done for the Rotary Club.
Question word in it anywhere. So they ask great questions.
Yeah, and kids can often not quite grasp the idea of the question. They could be like, well, I have a cat. And like, okay, that's not a question, but thank you for sharing. But these questions were not only just proper questions, which is quite refreshing, but also really great questions about like the theatrical apparatus. Yeah, we had one really good question from one of the kids about how do you do all the quick changes.
Brilliant question.
I don't know if they used the word quick changes or it's like, how did you change your clothes so much? Yeah, I think is how they put it.
So fast.
Yeah, that is them being very attentive to, wow, the costumes change. They're aware that this is the same person, the actor putting on a new outfit, being a different character.
So I feel like that particular child's teacher probably did do a phenomenal job going through the teacher guide on the website for the play to really prep the class, and maybe said, hey, you have to look, there's only 3 actors in all of these characters. So pay attention to, because, we wouldn't have known who was the dragon, for example, in the paper.
Yes,
Princess,
because the mask covers Amy Lee, who played the dragon's face.
So I feel, again, there were some teachers in that room who really prepared their kids, their students for like such an amazing experience that I wish more students had a chance to experience.
And there was also even one question that I thought was interesting that was asked later in the Love You Forever sequence. They replicate the child growing up over the course of a lifetime.
That was such a great question.
And one student asks, like, how did the kid get bigger or something along that lines? And I think the actors misunderstood the essence of the question in this particular moment at the performance that we attended, where they thought it was an extension of the quick change question, because also Megan Murphy, who played the child in that sequence, they were always, they had a lot of quick changes, not to change characters in that sequence, but to change ages of the child over the course of that. And one of them even had to be underneath the blanket in the bunk bed that prominently is featured in scene. They were changing their clothes underneath that blanket without anyone noticing, so that when the blanket came off, suddenly they're in a new outfit.
It was amazing.
So I think that was a reasonable way to maybe respond to that question. But I feel like the kids' question was less about the pragmatics of costume changing and more the spiritual element of the magic of live theater, of how did you grow before my eyes? I could have sworn you were a child a second ago, but some of that is explained by the pragmatics of, I was wearing a onesie and now I'm wearing a leather jacket, and that's kind of different. But in another sense, it is just, I think the magic of live theater is able to trick the children into seeing something that they're not really
it was so well done. It was so well done. But in answering and maybe misunderstanding the question, both things were answered, actually.
Yes, true.
The quick change, and also because they had to do it under the blanket on the top bunk of the bed. The set was so good too. The set design.
The set design was phenomenal. By Robin Fisher, who's really excellent. And the costumes that we've already spoken about a little bit are by Jung-Ae Im. Did the costume design, very excellent work for both of them.
Excellent. So I think the question, while maybe perhaps slightly misunderstood, it was answered. The quick change. And then, because by doing it under the blanket, they grew in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
So it was so good. It was
very true. While we're talking about set design in particular, I love the way that it was constructed to look a lot like the Michael Marchenko illustrations that are so famously attached to the Robert Munsch brand, that even though Marchenko doesn't illustrate all of Robert Munsch's books, they have a very long-standing partnership and collaboration. Love You Forever in particular is famously not one that's illustrated by Marchenko, who is the illustrator on that.
Yeah, Sheila McGraw.
And it's obviously a very different art style to anybody who's familiar with how they look. And something that's just like a subtle detail that I think really works well in the creation of this set, which is Mortimer's bedroom, is where the entire play takes place. all of the set design has like this black outline trim on all of the edges of the furniture to make it look like that sort of inked drawing in a children's picture book, to make it pop the way that it does. That real furniture doesn't have that sharp black outlining, but it really does recreate the sense of that illustration style.
Yeah, quite brilliant. Like, it was all so well thought out.
Yeah, very well. Before we get into spoilers, do you want to shout out our actors at all?
I thought they were all phenomenal.
Yeah, so there were three of them who did all of the roles.
All those characters, because they're characters in books.
Yeah.
Three of them playing all of that. Like, they were all phenomenal. One thing that I thought was, I mean, they were all phenomenal, but the actor who played the entire narrator, if that's the right word, Mortimer, he played Mortimer.
Yeah, Mortimer is our kind of POV character throughout all of this. Right? It was David Andrew Reed is the actor's name.
Yeah, so David was so agile. The cartwheel was perfect.
Yeah.
The handstand in that toy box.
Yeah, really.
Mind-blowing. And how many times did he need to come down the fireman pole, like at the side of the bunk, like just and to control it, to come down like so theatrically, like it was so good.
So I've actually seen David perform before, and he's done like a lot of musical theater. He's done some at Stratford. He's recently, just last season at Soulpepper, he was in a show called A Strange Loop, which is definitely not for kids, which just shows the versatility of his performance here, that he takes on this child persona very well. It's important, I guess, to note for those who haven't seen the show, that these are three adult performers playing a variety of roles, many of which are children. And David in particular, by playing the central character of Mortimer, is a child for almost the entirety of the performance, with a few exceptions where he plays other adult characters. One just like so athletic, so theatrical, the cartwheels, the handstands, the going down the fire pole, as you mentioned.
It made the kids really engage so well with it.
Yeah.
Because those are so visual.
And you could tell he has a bit of a dance background there, that he's able to do that type of athleticism.
All three of them are mega talented.
Yeah. So he was really excellent. And as the anchor of the character of Mortimer, he really does lead us through the journey in a lot of ways.
Yeah, all the transitions.
And then we have two other very talented performers here. We had Amy Lee, who played a variety of mostly maternal roles, actually, throughout the story, but also a few child roles herself. She plays Loretta, the main character of Zoom, the child in that story. She plays a lot of the mothers. She's the mother in the I Love You Forever story, and she plays the dragon in the Paper Bag Princess. So that's very fun. I've been seeing Amy perform for years. She's one half of my favorite Toronto-based clown duo, Morrow and Jasp. And I just think she's so funny and so talented. And I've seen her outside of that clown persona in many roles and performances. And I think she's just so talented. And this is a real showcase of her versatility in this. What did you think of Amy's performance across the board?
It was quite brilliant. Just so well done. All the roles.
How did you feel about her switching between adult and child roles? Because I feel like of the three, she was the one who lived in adults' worlds most consistently, perhaps.
Yeah, well, it was also seamless. That I don't even know how to answer that question, because like you don't notice it, and that shows how good it was, I think.
Interesting, yeah. And then the third performer, who we've already named briefly, is Megan Murphy, who plays a variety of roles. They played Mortimer's sister, and I think that's kind of listed as their main role in the program, just as Amy Lee is listed as mother. But it feels reductive to say that they're just sister, because they also play Princess Elizabeth in the Paper Bag Princess. So prominently featured character there. They were Loretta's mom in the Zoom sequence. They were the child in the Love You Forever sequence.
Yeah, they really performed phenomenally throughout.
Yeah, so just an excellent cast. So happy with all of them. They did wonderful work here. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we dive deeper into Spoiler Zone?
I don't think so.
No? Here's maybe a question that if you don't feel like you can answer this without spoiling, then we can save it for later, but I'll bring it up now as a bridge into that section. Do you think this is a show that is more so for children or more so for adults, either adults your age who read these books to their kids way back when, or adults my age who remember having them read to us way back when?
Well, I think it's for all ages, young, old, and everywhere in between, because it's nostalgic for people like even your age already. And certainly for me, it's very nostalgic. It's clearly for kids. And I love that it's it is, I guess, marketed to schools as, it would be a waste not to.
As pretty much all of YPT's shows
Right.
do.
It would be a waste not to, because what an opportunity to expose kids to live theater. A lot of children would never have that if it weren't for a school field trip. And so, no, I think it is absolutely for all ages, although would there ever be an adult other than a reviewer like yourself or like Lori?
Or yourself.
Oh, suddenly I'm such a reviewer.
You are literally in this moment, yes.
Famous.
Reviewers aren't famous.
I told you I wanted the paper bag. So I do think it's for all ages, but I don't know if you would find just the average adult attending without a child in tow, unless if they were there to review or checking it out as a school teacher ahead of taking a class or something. I don't know if you would have adults go. You would definitely have an adult attend a Pixar movie in a movie theater. Maybe that's what I'm trying to that you would have all the time. I would go. Generally go alone, but I'm saying I would want to go see that type of thing. Would I think to buy myself a ticket to go without borrowing someone's child or grandchild? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly why I bring this up, because I do think there is very much a this is for the kids vibe to it, despite the fact that the source material that it's based on transcends generations to the point where you'd think, while there is certainly a lot for us to enjoy in it, I would feel weird if I wasn't attending this show on my own, despite the fact that I love those books. I want to see it. But it doesn't, I think if I wasn't reviewing it, I just bought myself a ticket, I would feel uncomfortable that I don't know if this is for me. I'm glad that I am reviewing, because now I don't have to feel that discomfort. There's an interesting distinction that was drawn for me once when I was attending a Zoom conference with some of my colleagues in the Association for Adaptation Studies, where they were talking about children's media, specifically movies or television, and they drew an interesting distinction that I don't feel is addressed very often, because we often talk about oh, well, it's a kid's movie, but it's also for the adults. And, sometimes if there's a dirty joke that'll go over the kid's head, they're that's for the adults. But the distinction that one of my colleagues drew at this mini conference was that there is children's media and there is media that does not actively exclude children. And, and most of what we call children's media actually falls more so into the latter. A Pixar movie could be very much for literally everybody, and especially for hipster adults who will sob watching it. But it doesn't actively exclude children because it's colorful and it moves fast, and they'll get a lot out of it too in their own way, but it's maybe not even for them. Whereas the example of children's media proper that they used in this example is Coco Melon, for if you are familiar with that crack for babies, that as a lot of people call it, that no adult is going to just put on Coco Melon and watch that as their media diet. So that's an interesting way we can think of this. And while I feel like there are aspects of this that certainly do appeal to all ages demographics, I do think it does veer more into that this is children's media category. The fact that I think I might have felt weird not reviewing it, buying a ticket to see this, makes me think that it's not really for me, despite the fact that these books were for me when I was a child. But I think the show is maybe operating on a principle of once you ascend out of childhood, you might have nostalgia, but it's no longer for you. And I think that's an interesting thing to note for people listening pre-spoiler who might be wondering whether or not this is for them.
Well, it's funny that I probably agree with that, yet when I come to a library or I walk into an Indigo, I'll spend way embarrassingly too long in the children's section because I love children's books.
Yeah.
I'm constantly reading children's books, and I bring home stacks of them from the library, even though I don't have young children at home.
You have 2 grandchildren on the way.
I have 2.
Not from me, unfortunately, but I'm going to have 2 little nieces or nephews soon.
Yeah, well, you can be the funkle, as you said.
I'm going to be a fun uncle. Yes, I'm going to be the funnest uncle.
The funkalist.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have no I don't find that weird to
I agree.
Children's section and then come home with a stack of children's books to really. I love to look at the art and I love to read the words and see how the author crafted them. But yeah, I don't know that I would have gone alone to see this.
Yeah, and I think there's a few things about that. There's the difference of you grab a book to read in the privacy of your own home. That is a children's book, perhaps.
I totally read it on the GO train too.
Okay, well, that's interesting, but you're sort of aware that that's quirky when you do it. And
okay, now I'm quirky too.
Yeah, in a fun way. You're going to be a fun grandma.
The funnest, okay.
But I also think that while, yes, you do enjoy that, and it's certainly there is a lot for you to enjoy in it, you still engage with it in a different way, knowing that it's for children. You don't read a Robert Munsch book the same way you read a John Grisham book,
Oh, of course.
for example. And I think the awareness that I'm an adult reading it to try to appreciate it the same way that a child would appreciate it is part of that readerly experience.
Mm, makes sense.
And I think we approached our spectatorship of this piece in a similar way. We weren't like saying, well, there's no dirty jokes in this, so I guess it's not for us. We're appreciating it in the mindset of a child in many ways, with the exception perhaps of the Love You Forever sequence, because that book is by design just as much for the parents as I think it is for the children. And yet I would even argue that there was still, we'll get more into this post-spoiler perhaps, but more of a child perspective over how they adapted that particular book.
Right.
Which we'll see if maybe I can be convinced out of that opinion, but that's sort of my thought going in.
It's very hard to convince you out of any opinion.
I don't know. I go into these episodes hoping to be convinced, and there have been many where people make a good case. I'm like, I hadn't considered that. I like it more than I did before. Thank you for sharing that. Well, we've gotten a lot of overview. I think now's probably a very good time to put a paper bag that says spoilers somewhere on the screen in honor of our paper bag princess, Elizabeth. So everything from this point is spoilers here on out. If you want to see the show, now's your chance to get off. Although we have to wonder how do you even spoil a show like this? We still want to, out of respect for those who might want to go untainted, we'll do the spoiler section. But these are like very famous books. Even if you have never read these books before, there's not a lot you can necessarily get surprised by or be spoiled by. They are written for the child perspective, who's more easily surprised than adults are. I don't know. we're still gonna, the paper bag is on the screen for this purposes. Okay, well, there's any number of directions we can go in this. I think one that I'd like to start with, if you're okay with me leading the ship here,
please do,
is the Mortimer framing device, because and we spoke about this as we were leaving the theater, that one might expect and could easily imagine a version of this show that is just vignette structure of we're doing one book, then we're doing another book, then we're doing another book, then we're doing another book. We've done all 5 books, show's over, go home, kids. But the way that our adapters here, which is Stephen Colella and Sue Minor, have constructed the material is through the plot of Mortimer as this recurring framing device, and Mortimer himself as our point of view character leading us through the other 4 books. What did you think of how this was handled?
It surprised me because I did expect it to be just one book after the other. I had a certain order in my mind. And then it from the beginning, it was quite clear that's not what they're going to do. And I thought that was brilliant. I loved it. I loved the way it was, how they decided to do it, or it was very creative, very, very creative. I would not have been able to think of doing it that way. And I just loved it.
Yeah. How did you feel about Mortimer himself as a character threaded throughout these stories that he otherwise wouldn't have been part of?
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant idea. It was so different than I didn't expect it. So I thought that was very clever and very creative.
Okay. I have thoughts about this that I want a blanket statement say that this isn't like a spicy critique. This isn't, I think the show is very nice how it is. But I think part of what I'm just maybe in my adult brain getting tripped up on here is some of the ways that the character of Mortimer is used throughout these other stories. And some of them work very well. Like in Murmel, 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 for example, Mortimer just becomes this child who... Does this child have a name in the book? Let's find out. And this is why we have him handy here. Robin is the name of this child, the protagonist of Murmel, 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 who finds the baby, who just gets referred to by the onomatopoeic sound that it makes, the title of the book. That Robin character becomes Mortimer, who finds a baby in his bedroom and then goes on this adventure trying to find a home for this baby. And I think that works very well. Like, that's just Robin is essentially a non-character. She's a bit of a cipher that doesn't really have that much personality or interiority to herself, so why not Mortimer for that role? And it's a departure from his bang bang rattling clang story, make noise all day. But it's really because it's also taking place in his bedroom. This is like a game of make-believe that he's playing when he goes on this adventure with Murmel, Murmel, Murmel. There were other versions of these stories where I don't know if it worked as well for me. And the main example that comes to my mind for this is the paper bag princess sequence, where in Mortimer's imaginative play, reenacting this story, he casts himself in the role of Prince Ronald. Or rather, it's framed as if Elizabeth is casting him as Ronald and he's just playing along with that. But if we're to go with an interpretation that this is his make-believe, Ronald is a strange character to cast yourself in.
He's not the hero of the story.
He's not only is he not a hero, he's a bum.
I know, he's a bum.
And part of why I don't know if this worked for me personally is not just that he's making himself this unflattering figure, but it's kind of inconsistent with the way that Mortimer is characterized. For example, when Princess Elizabeth first introduces him to himself as Ronald, and like, well, we're going to get married, he goes like, ew, which is inconsistent with the Ronald in the story who does want to marry Elizabeth, but it's I'm Mortimer, I'm a little boy, I don't want anything to do with that.
But he's still the little boy.
Yeah, which is fine because it's him playing the role. But then when she defeats the dragon through an exhaustion tactic, a war of attrition, if you will, and does then go to save him, and he famously tells her that she looks like a mess in her paper bag, go change into princess clothes. That feels strange coming from Mortimer, who we are led to believe is still playing the role of Ronald. And like maybe they could have done something in the framing staging of it where it's like, oh, right, I'm Ronald, this is my line. Like, that could have been, but the way that it's just Ronald himself, or Mortimer himself as Ronald saying that, kind of, it didn't seem consistent with how Mortimer had been characterized, and it didn't seem consistent with how the you-saying child of Mortimer viewed his role in this story. What is prompting him to be so disgusted by Elizabeth's outfit? Any thoughts about that? That was something that kind of tiny irked me a bit.
So I think because it was clearly, and we kind of established this, a play for the children.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if any of the children, certainly none of them would have overthought it the way you just.
If I was a child, I'd have overthought it.
Yes, but you.
Yeah, so who's to say there aren't children like me in the audience?
1 in a million, and I think that it still showed it that one of those overarching themes that is so Robert Munsch and so well done in this show of joy in humor. Because the children giggled in that moment when he was that child. Ooh, like, why would I want to be married like girls? Ooh, right? So it ticked that box. Like it was trying to do that throughout the whole, like to be funny. Like all Robert Munsch books have so many funny moments. So I think that it belonged in there.
Yeah, and I'm not even contesting the you in there, but I think that establishes a way that Ronald is characterized as still Mortimer. And then when we get to that later scene, it doesn't feel like he's still Mortimer anymore. It seems like he has become completely Ronald to say the mean thing that Ronald has to say. But then that to me, because we've established that Ronald is Mortimer playing a character, I wonder, why does Mortimer play that role? It doesn't seem, even though we have the sequence at the beginning where Mortimer's mom reads him a speedrun version of the 4 other books that we're gonna hear. So, and that I think,
which was so well done.
Yeah, that's really good as establishing that. Okay, so Mortimer has these stories in his head, and that's why, whether it's his dream or his playtime, that something leads him to reenact these stories in his play space, if you will. But then I think there's a way of still getting the story to culminate in that line, because to be the paper bag princess, it has to, while still making it clear that this is Mortimer playing the part, rather than, oh, now he's just Ronald and Ronald has to be a jerk because he's a bum. I don't know. That was something that, thinking about, it's not a scathing critique by any means.
Not at all, and I don't think any of the children would have even really gotten there. So
yeah. The other one that I'm less picky about, but it's something else that I thought about, is in the I Love You Forever sequence. Because that's a story that is entirely told in the third person in the book. And it is just you have the mom and the child, and it kind of gets into the mom's head until it sort of, once the child grows up, switches perspectives to the now adult child's head, offspring's head. That I think Mortimer's presence on stage throughout that was kind of interesting. I feel like it was it kind of spoon feeds the narration of that story in a way that the original book actually doesn't, if that makes sense. That it sort of gives mom someone to talk to walk through the ideas about the child growing in a way that, doesn't add that much text, but feels like it's in a way removing some of the subtlety of what makes that book so good. I don't know if you have any thought about that. I'm less picky about this one, but it's still, while I'm thinking about what function Mortimer is doing throughout these stories, that's one that I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, it's presented in a very different way than the book, but I thought it was more because there's so little time. Like the whole show was an hour.
Yeah.
Like, there's so little time for really each story that I thought it was more like chosen. I thought perhaps they chose to do it that way in order to tell it more efficiently.
If anything, though, it adds more time because
That's
now there's
it.
this other person talking. Like, these are very short books that you can read in like 10 minutes easily.
That's because you haven't read it to a child who will stop on like every picture.
Sure, but they're not stopping on every picture when they go through it in the show. So as much as that's a consideration in story time, it's not something they needed to think about in this play. And yeah, I think the addition of these conversations between Mom and Mortimer, they don't add much textually, but they add a little bit. So I don't know if I buy streamlining the efficiency as a reason for it. I think it's just that keeping the framing device of this is Mortimer's imagination to not break with it entirely for the story where he really doesn't seem present. But then we get Zoom, and Mortimer is very much not present in that story. He's established early on as the guy who's the salesman at the wheelchair store. They kind of point to him like, here's the salesman. And then he's like, oh, right. And he puts on the blazer to the
flashy blazer.
Flashy blazer again. Jung A.M., great costume design across the board here. But then as soon as he puts that costume on, it doesn't seem like he's Mortimer playing a part anymore. He's just taken on that role, similar to what I think the second half of his Ronald performance did, but not the first half.
Okay.
And then he becomes the traffic cop later in that scene. And there's not even like a transition of now, Mortimer, you become the traffic cop. He's just like, he comes in that costume and he's playing that role. So I think there's an interesting selectivity about how much Mortimer himself is leading the show in a lot of these ways. And I think in the Love You Forever sequence, they're really keeping him as him to be this narrator for that story, but a narrator that I don't really think we need, I guess. I don't know. These are just my dramaturgy thoughts.
I don't know theater speak, but I think he was the glue that held the 5 stories together.
I think he was, and I think there's like a different way of gluing them together still with him. Yeah. But I also would have been...
so I don't know. I thought it was great.
I think I also would have been just as happy with the imagined version of the 5 vignettes, move from one to the other. I think it's creative what they did, certainly.
This is way more creative.
Yeah. And it gave a bit of an arc for the Mortimer story, because it's not like we just saw all of that in sequence. And that is a pretty light on plot story as far as Robert Munsch books go. It is just he keeps making noise and people keep telling him not to, and then he keeps making noise until eventually he falls asleep. So the fact that that story got stretched across them kind of works to make that feel like more of a story, and by having him break out of that story to make noise through all these others.
Well, I think it worked really well to frame it that way, so that it starts with him as a little boy who's doing what all little kids do, negotiating, needing to go to bed and just finding every creative way to get out of having to go to sleep. And then he does all those other things except really calm down to go to sleep because he's so creative and imaginative. But then with the way they chose to do it, it ends with him back in his PJs, his little Mortimer, and then he's finally like tuckered himself out after imagining up all these other Robert Munsch stories, right? And doing all of the things that took place in front of our eyes on stage. And then, like, much to his own probably chagrin and surprise, he's sleepy.
Yeah.
And he finally, goes to sleep. It was a very good way to end it, seeing as they didn't go through the books in the order one at a time, vignette style, and not in the order that we did discuss.
We'll get to that in a second.
Right. So I thought that was great, that he was back in his PJs. He's whatever it was, 6 years old. And finally, he, after hard as he tried to do every imaginative thing he can do, He tuckered himself out.
And it's specifically the playing out these other stories is what tuckered him out eventually, which
Right.
kind of,
Well, that's why it
yeah,
was so, I
yeah,
thought, brilliantly
yeah. I think
done.
it's good. I like it. I'm
And
not,
it's not, and then that does give that theme that is so important and crucial to every Robert Munsch work. And they're, I'm a huge fan, and I think he's brilliant, Robert Munsch. Like imagination
Mhm.
and joy and fun, all those things are so huge. And to have, because he's banging and he's playing, he's singing his song, like the child Mortimer has a very noisy imagination,
Mhm.
and I think it's so well shown.
Yeah.
I thought it was good. That was great.
One thing while we're talking about the vignette structure here that I think is interesting, we didn't shout this person out in the first segment, but Jareth Lee, who did the lighting design, I think was very well done in terms of
Great.
how we had like a difference between lights on and lights off in Mortimer's room.
Well, that was smart. Very smart.
Yeah, so it turned into like a softer blue light when the lights are off, but still plenty illuminated, so we could see him getting into his ruckus, and then the turning those lights from the off to the on created this good dynamic. And then every time he went into another one of the stories, the lights changed accordingly. We had a fiery red in the Paper Bag Princess sequence for the fire of the dragon. And yeah, I just think there was a very good use of light to establish different imaginative locations and to create the lights on, lights off dynamic in Mortimer's bedroom in the reality of that space.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know if this is the right time to talk about, you're talking about lighting, but the sound design.
Yes, please, done by Olivia Wheeler.
So great. Like when they were moving the shelving unit that held all the toys closer to the bunk bed, but then when they put it back, it beeped like when a truck is backing up. Like so smart, and so clever. And so this all the different choices of sound where they were so well done.
There's also a lot of like really like bouncy, cartoonish music at various points, especially during the opening sequence of Mom trying to get Mortimer into bed and him negotiating, as you said, and the sister stealing his game and her doing
the electric toothbrush.
The electric like there was a real like peppy, cartoonish musicality to that. And the kind of interesting thing about, I think, the task that Olivia Wheeler had for what does a Robert Munsch book sound like, because there is no music in these, even one like Mortimer that has a prominent song, bang, bang, rattle, cling, clang, however it goes.
Or Love You Forever, which is about a song.
Well, and that's actually something that I'm glad we're getting here, because so in anticipation of us seeing this, you sent me a link to a CBC National mini documentary about Robert Munsch. That is about sort of the current state he's in, nearing the end of his life. And there's a very interesting little fact in there about how he has 50 books ready to go, one per year after he sadly will eventually pass away. That is going to continue his legacy, that kids 50 years from now will still have a new Robert Munsch book. That I think is just really beautiful and touching.
So amazing.
But why I bring this up in the context of the song is that I gasped at one particular moment watching this little mini documentary that you sent me, because when he's talking about the book Love You Forever, one of, I think, his greatest books, possibly one of the greatest children's books ever written, he in the video sings the song that the mother sings to the child. And what made me gasp is he did it in the exact same tune that you always sang that song to me while reading the book.
I noticed that when I watched the video too. And he's 80 years old. It's a current, it's recent, this video. It's probably the last interview he will sadly give. It was a very well done interview in his home with his wife there, all his books on the shelves. And you're right, he sang it. And I noticed that he sang it the same way we all, your two brothers, the way we all sang it. And I don't know why I sang it that way, but then when I mentioned this to your dad just the other day, he's pretty sure that we had probably taken out a VHS cassette back in the 90s of one of these Robert Munsch, like where he's reading the story. There were lots of videos we could get, from the library at the time, probably even Blockbuster at the time. And you're old now, I see.
Yeah, I remember Blockbuster.
Blockbuster was great.
I love Blockbuster.
I know we loved it. So yeah, your dad felt like that
we must have heard it somewhere.
That we must have heard it, and I don't remember that.
Neither do I.
I remember like everything, as you guys know.
And
right?
I do remember like animated cartoons of various Robert Munsch books, but I don't remember one from Love You Forever.
No, it was other ones.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, but like, I bought the book when your oldest brother was born in 1990, when David was born, and I read it to him. I probably bought it before he was born. I probably read it to him before I gave birth to him. So I was reading it. And that was the tune. And I don't know where, but yeah, Robert, it was really remarkable that at 80 years old, and thank goodness his long-term memory is, because he has been diagnosed with dementia in 2021. So the long-term memory is still great. Like he remembers the characters in the books and the tune to the song, how he wrote it, how he imagined it. And I didn't realize you would gasp when you hear that, because to me that's just how it's sung.
Well, because I kind of always thought that that's how we sung it, but of course nobody else sings it that way.
I had no idea how anybody else sings it.
And the tune for us is, you want to sing with me?
Should we? Like, now you not only want me to be on camera, you want me to sing? Well, I've heard everybody on the internet.
Do you want to be like the mom in one of the final segments of the book where she's too old and sick to sing the song? I don't think that's true for you.
They don't actually, in the book, it's not quite like that either.
It is. I just checked this morning.
In the book, the son is a grown-up man.
Yeah.
And he comes over. The mom doesn't try to sing it. He just picks her up and
Oh, I see that her trying. But no, turn one page earlier.
Oh, yes, you're right. She does start singing
over the phone, and she says, "I'm too old and sick to finish it."
Yes, and they did say that in the. Right, but she didn't try and get through the whole thing when he shows up. That's what I'm remembering.
Yeah, so they changed the timeline a little bit.
Totally, has to be done for
adaptational license there.
And also, there's not that much time to book. So you wanted to sing.
Would you like to sing the way we've always sung it, and apparently Robert Munsch does too?
So clearly we were right all along.
We were.
Robert Munsch imagined it.
I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living. My baby, you'll be.
And you are my baby.
And now I'm all grown up, and I will sing that song to you.
And we both sing horribly still. That's the beauty of when I worked in daycare and I was in the infant room and I was singing all day long. They didn't know how bad it was.
If you had been in the toddler room, would they have had an opinion about that?
No. I love toddlers. Oh my gosh, I love a 2-year-old.
Yeah. But part of why I bring this up, one, I was just so excited that, oh my God, we've been singing it the right way, ordained by the author's voice this whole time. In this show, bringing it back to what we're actually reviewing right now,
we both noticed.
They sing it very differently, a completely different tune. Yeah. You want to sing that or nah?
No, I don't even know if I totally remember, but it was a totally different tune to the one to us.
Yeah.
This is the right way.
Which, and I'm guessing that, like, this is corroborating what I always thought and was surprised was not the case when I saw Robert Munsch singing it in that video, is that I just assume there's as many different tunes as there are readers of this book, that everybody has the version they know. Ours is ours, and it's nothing like anyone else's, which made me surprised to find out that Robert Munsch sings it the exact same way. The version that we hear in this show, whether that's Stephen Colella and Sue Minor as the adapters who think like this is how the song goes. Maybe they provided sheet music with their adaptation for how they want it to go. Maybe Amy Lee, who plays the mother in that sequence, that's how like, oh, well, this is how I've always remembered the song going. This is how my mom sung it to me. So I think it's interesting how both the fact that, oh, we've been doing it right according to Robert Munsch this whole time, and the fact that there is indeed no right way because there's a million different ways to do it in this show testifies to yet another one of them.
Yeah, which is great because there's no right.
Yeah. Now, you hinted to this earlier about the order of the vignettes because you said you had a specific one in mind how you might have done it, but the show perhaps went in a different way. And of course, having the Mortimer framing device crafted some of that ordering. But how would you have structured the material if you were writing your own adaptation of specifically these 5 books?
So I don't know if I would have worried. Well, I would have figured it out, but I don't know if I would have obsessed as much about the first four and the order. I might have started it with the Paper Bag Princess just as a real empowerment beginning, or not. I hadn't really thought about it, but I think I would have ended it with Love You Forever.
Yeah.
And
So would I
chose not to, and I think I might. I have an idea of why maybe they chose not to, and short of interviewing them and asking them themselves, we won't know. I just assumed all along that it would end, and probably with the song, funny enough, our version, Robert Munsch's version. So I don't know why I thought it would end with that. Probably the title of the show is Love You Forever and More Munch.
Which could have just as easily implied that we start with that and follow.
Right. But I just think, I don't know. I just thought, so maybe I thought maybe I would have chosen to kind of begin it, use that as the arc, begin it with Love You Forever, maybe when he's young, and then do all the other imaginative stuff, which is recreating the other books.
Yeah.
And then end it with, I don't know, I've never written a play.
Yeah, no, I think it's because I also had the same thought that Love You Forever just feels like that emotional oomph, gut punch that you want to send the audience home with. But I think maybe part of the decision to not end with it, in my thinking, and you said you had your thought too, is that would specifically almost make it more for the adults.
Right.
That because I think more than any of the other four books that are being displayed here, that's the one that I think is the media that does not exclude children more so than the children's media, to use the framework that I mentioned earlier, that it is just as much, if not more, a book for the parent reading to the kid than it is for the kid themselves. The kid will have fun about like the hold up the cover, about like the toilet paper and like all the fun. There's a lot of fun stuff in it. But I think the meaningful weight of what the story is about, that's for the parents. I would say the same of The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein,
Absolutely.
which I would say that Robert Munsch probably sat down to be like, I'm going to write my Giving Tree when he wrote this book. I think that was probably
I don't think so, because he's a self-proclaimed underachiever. He never thought he would write books, so I don't think he was... there's that great beginning in the book of the paperback.
Right. Yeah. So this is what we have here from the Burlington Public Library.
We both learned a lot from that.
Yes, it's a 25th anniversary reissue of the Paper Bag Princess, and in addition to just having the whole book, it has this entire introductory sequence about how the book came to be, the beginning to end, little biographies of the creatives involved, the publishing process. We have some in-progress illustrations that they can find.
It's so brilliant to see Michael Marchenko's early imagination.
Yeah, so here's this. There's some fun fact about how initially Michael Marchenko was going to end it with the illustration of her throwing the paper bag away, but then you could see a bit too much of her naked child bum, so they decided...
He is a bum, Ronald.
So. He is, but it doesn't mean we need to see hers. So they rightfully changed it to this now iconic closing image of her just skipping away in the sunset, still in her paper bag. That has...
possibly familiar to people because it's the logo
for Anik Press that published this book, both originally and in this special commemorative reissue, and so many of Robert Munsch's books. It's also on the poster for this production that we are currently reviewing, so they understand the iconicness of that imagery. I also think it's interesting that on the poster they don't use another iconic image, which is the dragon that is on the cover of the book, but because they went with a red dragon costume in this, I guess they probably didn't want to put that prominent green dragon to front and center and have the kids be like, where's the green dragon? Which is kind of funny. Why did we bring up this edition? You had a point about this that we got derailed explaining?
Well, yeah. No, I lost that train. You're usually the one who's really good.
Yeah, so we'll get it
back to but just while you're talking about that really great book, so even this is a book that's geared to children, just to kind of right. But you and I really enjoyed that first part of the book where it's more for, is it more for the adults or is it more
is that what we were talking about?
It's a children's book about the 25th anniversary and how this book came to be. And but you and I, I thought that part was so much for the adults, and you and I enjoyed it so much. I read it a few times.
Yeah. So so then we were talking about the ordering and whether or not to put Love You Forever at the end. And I was saying that I think that would make it very much for the adults, the culmination of the show. And I think by going from Love You Forever to now we have the plot of Zoom, which is very fun and, quirky and great disability representation, both matter of fact about the fact that the main character uses a wheelchair, but makes that so inherent to the story that it's not like how your math textbook needs to have a kid in a wheelchair in it for representation, but it is actually like, no, this is something that is part of who you are. It's part of how you live your life and experience the world. And you can still have a fun story about that isn't, woe is me because I am in this state, as so many stories about people with all kinds of different levels of ability have to settle for.
And also come out the hero at the end because of needing that wheelchair.
Mm-hmm. And then still gets to have the fun of, well, it's too slow and I need a better one. And, I think there's a lot of great stuff about that book. A book that I don't remember ever reading as a child, but it's really fun.
We never owned it, and I do feel like we've had it out from the library, but maybe that point was more because I wanted to read it. Mm-hmm. I was also volunteering for 7 years in a children's library, so I was very familiar with it. There's so many books that you won't, like there's like 50 books current and then 50 more to come. So you probably don't even know some of the later ones.
No, yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. But perhaps I should revisit some of them.
I think they're always worth a visit if you've never read them in the first place, or a revisit. So I was just going to say, like, because we were kind of lost our train of thought for a moment, you said how you would have chosen to end the play, and you said I might have my own thoughts on it.
Right.
So I thought maybe I assumed that's how it would end with Love You Forever. I think maybe they didn't want to end it on a teary note, because like it's hard to not kind of be teary when
I got so misty in the eyes.
I know, right? And the Globe and Mail review of the play mentioned that even the reviewers were sniffling, which was a great review actually. So maybe they actually wanted to end it with the fun and the whimsy of Zoom.
Yeah. Zoom, and then going back to the end of Mortimer, which makes sense with the framing.
Puckered himself out finally, and imagined all these stories.
Yeah, and like I wonder, do kids get all misty in the eyes the way adults do with the end of I Love You Forever? Is that
I don't know if they see it as much.
Yeah, that's what I mean by that segment in that book is just as much, if not more, for the adults than for the kids. So by ending it on that, it would have been like okay, parents, this one's for you now. And I don't know if it would resonate the same way. There's a lot to resonate with the children in it on its own terms.
Right.
But yeah, so I think going to Zoom and then ending with Mortimer, it works for emphasizing that the kids are the primary audience for this. Still include Love You Forever because it's a great book and kids can love it in their own way for their own reasons. But building towards that. Let's say it again.
I don't think you could do anything Robert Munsch without Love You Forever.
Yeah. Well, you can do it. He's written lots of books. There's 50 more that are...
Oh, no, but if you were doing a compilation of...
Yeah. I think there is another performer, M. John Kennedy, his name is. He does a Robert Munsch variety show in Toronto. I've never seen it myself, but I would maybe like to check it out now. And he's just like, as a solo performer, he just like tells them in a dynamic way, and he has Munch's approval to use the entire catalog. And
nice.
So I've never seen his shows, but I'm sure because he's just like using all of them in a variety, he must do many shows that don't include Love You Forever, don't include Paper Bag Princess.
But it's multiples. Yeah.
But for this as the Robert Munsch show at YPT, it makes sense that they include certainly what I would call the two most famous books and the one that really gets you in the feels most of all. Is there any last thoughts you'd like to say before we wrap this conversation up?
No, I think we covered a lot in a weird order maybe. But
that's okay. This is how we do. This is how these conversations go. I had a lot of fun seeing this show with you. I'm so glad that I got to share this with you.
Thank you for letting me do this with you, asking me to do this with you. It was so great. It was such a great experience. I was looking forward to it. It was really like such a highlight. Thank you, because I love you forever.
I like you for always.
I like you for always.
As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be.
You'll be. Thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you for not coming to my apartment with a ladder and breaking in to sing to me in the middle of the night. I was sorry they didn't put it in the play because I always threatened to do this for all three of you. Now, when you guys grow up and you move as we have.
I know, because you abandoned me. I always threatened to do this, which is in the book, where the mom puts the ladder on her pickup truck or
Or
whatever,
some kind
a
of
car,
vehicle. Looks
her
more like a
car.
sedan.
It's a car. And that's how she gets into her grown-up son's apartment. And you can see in the
Yeah.
Sheila McGraw illustration, you can see the ladder at the window.
Yes.
And I always, that's why you're laughing, because I always turned, oh, don't you worry, when you all grow up, I'm gonna strap that ladder to the car and I'm coming uninvited.
While we're talking about things that are in the illustrations and that may or may not have appeared in the show, in that case, the ladder wasn't replicated in here, but there was something I noticed rereading The Paperback Princess just this morning, is that I think it's just so cute that Prince Ronald always has a tennis racket in every time he's illustrated. And it's funny, even like when he's been kidnapped by the dragon, he's still holding his tennis racket. Yeah. And that, like, it signifies like preppy, rich kid, entitled, their tennis anyone kind of mindset.
Not a poor person sport. Yeah.
And it occurred to me reading this, like, oh man, that would have been such like an easy costume or prop thing to just to have him holding a tennis racket, and people who remember the book will remember why it's funny. But then I remembered, and I think you probably prodded me to remember this, is that Princess Elizabeth gives him a hockey stick to be like a prince's scepter. While it maybe has different connotations, we don't think of hockey as preppy, rich kid activity in the same way that we think about tennis. I do think there's like an attempt to visually imbue the aesthetics of Canadiana in this elbows up moment that they have done this adaptation into. Robert Munsch, of course, is Canadian, and like this is such Canadian CanCon content right here that we are engaging with. And if it had been a tennis racket, that wouldn't be any less Canadian by virtue of how that content is. But they really wanted to get some hockey in there. They kept the line in Loretto when she's talking about how she got a speeding ticket, or the mom's guessing what kind of ticket it is, and she says a ticket to a hockey game. Yeah. They really wanted to have, just remember, this is Canadian. Keep them elbows up, folks.
Yeah, no, it was very cute. But Mortimer did have the hockey stick in his room from the beginning, and one of his extending not going to bed tactic was he started playing hockey at one point. So it was in his, the prop was there.
Establishes it, and that also conveys the fact of Mortimer becoming Ronald, taking on that role of, here's a prop from your bedroom. You're using that in a new way to signify that you are now the prince.
Yeah, I love the hockey stick.
Yeah, it was a very good detail. And as much as I think the tennis racket is funny, I think this was a clever, meaningful change.
Excellent choice on their part. It was just a great show. Yeah. Everybody should take their kids to see it, if they can. Teachers should figure out how to make this a field trip. March break is coming, so obviously
this goes until March 21st, so I imagine that will be a good time.
It's a good show to, if you're able to get your family out during March break. It's worth the field trip into the city for someone from the suburbs.
For those who are not in the city.
Well, for someone from the suburbs, it was.
Yes, I'm glad you were willing to venture into my turf to join me for this.
The people-y city.
Well, we usually end these episodes by asking our guest if they would like to plug anything, share their Instagram if people want to keep up with them. Would you like people to look at all your bunnies?
They can look at my Instagram. I don't post very much because I don't foster currently, but there's a lot of cute bunnies to see, especially a lot of Melly and Harmy, who are the bonded pair that I fostered. So the Instagram is Be Kind to All Kinds. Mm-hmm. That's all I have because my website's down. So that's all I have.
Yes, yeah. And so many people are going to be like, where can we get this book now? And, they're out of luck. You might need to do a 25th anniversary reissue with the fun story.
Not 25 yet, but it's over 15.
Yeah, 15. There you go.
I can tell the story of how not to publish a book. All the lessons I learned.
Well, thank you so much for joining me again for this discussion. For those who like our work and want to follow us, we are at COH Theater on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Not calling Twitter the other thing that's stupid. We are at Cup of Hemlock Theater on YouTube, where you might be watching this. Cup of Hemlock Theater podcast in all the podcast places where you might be listening to this. This has been a wonderful, child-friendly but not child-exclusive discussion of Love You Forever and More Munch presented at Young People's Theater. That's it for us today, and we will see you all in the next episode. Cheers with our sloths.
With our sloths.